Hey, welcome to Thought Thursday with Pastor Josh. A thought is the product of mental activity, that which one thinks. It is a single act or product of thinking, idea, or notion. We're going to talk about what that looks like today on this edition of Thought Thursday. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me once again for our podcast. We're in chapter 12 today of the book Unoffendable by Brent Hansen. And the title of the chapter is Anger's Fun, Except for the Boiling, Blazing, and Burning Part. And he begins the chapter by giving a whole bunch of references to anger recorded in Scripture. He says, so overall, how does Scripture, which is well acquainted with injustice, describe anger? Well, anger is described as fierce and cruel in Genesis 49:7. It's burning in Exodus 11. In the same book, it's also described as a blazing fury. And if you're not careful, it can blaze against you, Exodus 15:22 and 24. Leviticus 26, anger is something given full vent and equated with hostility. In Deuteronomy, it is associated with the words burn and destroy. In 1 Samuel, we see that anger that boils with rage. Anger will not be quenched, according to 2 Kings. And in 2 Samuel 6, it bursts out. In Job 4, it blasts. And in Job 16, God himself in anger tears and pierces. Anger is terrifying and fierce in Psalm 2:5. It's burning and consuming in Psalm 69, then smoldering intensely in Psalm 74. In Isaiah 9:12, it's associated with a fist poised to strike. In chapter 30, it's demonstrated with flames, cloudbursts, thunderstorms, and hailstones. And in Isaiah 63:3, it tramples. It doesn't exactly chill out in Lamentations. The words engulfed and slaughtered are used in chapter 3. And he says, I'm not cherry picking. There's just a lot of references to anger in the Bible as something wonderful. There's just not a lot of references to anger in the Bible being something wonderful. And yet now we're told it's a gift for our use when we feel it's reasonable. So he's making reference to how Christians refer to anger at different times. It says, we're also told we should be aroused to anger when we see one of God's commands being broken. Really? Then we're going to be busy, really, really busy. We're also going to be really, really angry all the time. And that's just at ourselves, for starters. He says, maybe I'm supposed to be not supposed to be angry that often. And maybe maybe I'm supposed to be angry that often, and maybe it's really a gift. Maybe it'll make my life more joyful and peaceful. So long as I don't mind the burning, blazing, cold, cloud bursting, striking, thundering, hailing, tearing, piercing, trampling, slaughtering, boiling, and the occasional blasting part. If this is, in fact, what we're supposed to do, experience righteous anger whenever we're made aware of one of God's commands being broken, will be precisely what the world doesn't need, and largely believes we already are, a bunch of uptight, seething hypocrites. The Bible directs us to get rid of anger in Ephesians 4:31 and Colossians 3:8. But the idea of righteous anger turns that directive on its head. We can actually pat ourselves on the back for being offended and embracing anger. And all that boiling, piercing, corrosive power becomes part of our lives and destroys us. And then he goes on to share, and I know I'm reading a little bit more of it today because I think this is quite good. He tells a story of their son Justin when he was younger and how he loved trash, like literal garbage, like the stuff under your sink. He was just fascinated with all garbage. They even had they found videos of garbage trucks and whatnot, just hours of footage of garbage trucks, and their child would watch this, and he just loved it. And so one day, more than one day actually, but at least one particular time he's telling this story, their son Justin brings in this bag of garbage into the room, and he was just so excited and mesmerized by the garbage, which sounds crazy to us, right? And so Brant, really offers to take the garbage. He even offered him $100 to take all the garbage, and Justin wouldn't do it. He wanted to keep the garbage, and so Brant kind of goes on to share that. He says there's no way that he would do it. There's no way that he would give me the garbage for the $100 bill. He says, and you know what? You and I are just like him. We cling to our self-righteousness and can't possibly imagine giving it up. We think we're supposed to we think it's how we're supposed to live. Wait, we're supposed to surrender the idea that we know others' motivations? We're supposed to give up thinking we know everyone's spiritual temperature? We're supposed to live without constantly assessing where we are ourselves and where we stand spiritually? He says, wait, we're supposed to surrender all that? We can't even imagine our lives that way. And you might be thinking, well, I'm not that way. Well, I think we should all think again. I think we should all look a little harder at our lives, because I think for the most part, this is really true. We hold on to our self-righteousness all the time. We want to hold people accountable to certain things. We want to look at their lives and say, oh, well, this is where they are. We want to be able to look at their lives and evaluate them in their faith. And we do it all the time, but we don't effectively, fairly do that with ourselves. And so he says, how do I assess the relative spiritual temperature of these people? How do I determine where they stand with God? And he says, answer, I don't. It's not our job. That's part of the offense, is that we can become so easily offended with people because as we look at their lives, we feel like they don't match up to what they should. And but if we look at our lives, isn't that also the case? That truthfully we don't match up, and that's why God gave us grace, is because in our time of struggle and our failures, God is graceful, faithful, and He is always ready to give us His mercy. And I know people will always retort and say, well, but we need to be able to spur one another on and to good works. The Bible tells us to do that. Yeah, but I don't think we've figured that out yet. I don't think we've figured out exactly how to do that and how to do it well. And that's the big thing. How do we do that the correct way? Many times we think spurring one another on is to be mean and to point out all their flaws, and that's not how that is. This idea of spurring one another on is to encourage one another. It's not to whip each other and to get the horse moving because you're whipping him. That's not what it's meant to be. And so we need to remember that it looks different than what we think it looks like. And if we can figure that out, I think we'll be less offended by the people around us. If we can allow God to assess the people, and really we need to ask Him to assess our heart first. And that's what the psalmist did. He says, Lord, examine my heart, test my heart to see if there be any wicked way in me. And that's where we have to start. And if we can do that, we'll find ourselves becoming less offendable because we understand our sin full well. And let's be honest, we're busy allowing the Lord to impact our lives and to change us, that we're too busy allowing Him to do that, that we can't spend all of our time trying to change someone else. And we need to give Him our trash. We need to give Him our self-righteousness and realize exactly where we are, who we are. And in those moments, we'll find ourselves being less offended because, quite honestly, we don't have time to be offended. And if we're offended at them, we know full well that our sin is worse because it's right before our own eyes. And we can't just throw stones at someone else while we are doing something the same or even worse. And so it's important for us to have a good perspective. So I want to challenge you with that today, going into this weekend. Allow the Lord to take your trash. Allow Him to take the trash. He has so many things better to give us and so much to give us that isn't trash. And so don't settle for the trash when the blessings of God are right there, right at His right hand, ready to be bestowed upon us. Don't allow the trash to circumvent the blessings of God in your life.